All right. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, Fred.
Hi guys.
Yes.
Um,
And hi to all those watching in the replay or watching in the live stream. And thank you for joining us. We're now in our Friday Inuman session and we wanted to learn more about craft beers. Na-addict na kami sa craft beers, especially those are in Manila. And we wanted to know more about Boondocks Brewing with head brewer Fred Calope. Tama?
that's
Fred
right.
Calope.
Tama,
And
tama.
it will be exciting if you're watching in the live stream now. Maybe you can join us by commenting, join us for a few minutes, and join our Inuman session with Fred. All right. Thank you. And we're here talking to and thank you for All right, game. I'm so excited, Fred. Siguro for those people maybe they don't know what Boondocks Brewing or brewing beer is. Maybe you can share with us what it is. How did you get started, and then we'll
Okay,
go with the tasting.
sure. So, okay, how to start? Well, first, good evening to everyone. Hi, I'm happy to be here. So, paano nag-start ang Boondocks Brewing? Well, actually, um, I'm actually a lawyer. I was practicing law
Talaga?
for a while,
Oo
for some
nga.
time. Yeah, but that's kind of how the story happened. So before, so nagpa-practice ako ng law in the U.S. and here in the Philippines. And what happened was nung bumalik kami nung 2010, 2010. At the time, wala pang really there were not a lot of beer. There wasn't a lot of beer selection sa dito sa atin. And so it was one of the things that I missed while I was in the States. And it just so happened na before long time before I became a lawyer, nung college pa ako sa States, I was reminded na I actually brewed beer in college when I was in the States. It's just that when I brewed beer in college, yeah, when I brewed beer in college, wala naman akong what's the word I'm looking for? The reason na nagbrew ako ng beer nung college is I was trying to save money because I wanted to be able to stretch my allowance to buy more beer. The problem is that yes, it is cheaper na kung magbubrew ka ng sarili mong beer. But the problem when you brew your own beer and you're a college student and what you want is to be able to drink the beer fast, you lack the patience to actually brew beer properly. So let's just say I had experiences in college of brewing beer. I would never sell that beer because it was no good. So why am I bringing that story up? I'm bringing that story up kasi yun na nga, nung bumalik na ako dito sa Pilipinas, I was reminded by a colleague, a friend of mine, na didn't you used to brew beer in college? And I said, yeah, I guess I did brew beer. And then he said, well, maybe instead of complaining about not having options here in the Philippines, why don't you just brew your own beer and you can have more options? And so I said, yeah, okay, sounds like a good idea. Let's do that. So I did. So I actually started brewing beer um, on that exact stove.
Wow, talaga? You can do that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's how a lot of how most home brewers start. You start off by annoying your spouse by buying a bunch of stuff na gagawa ka ng beer sa inyong kusina. And then it takes up a lot of space. Tapos kung gusto niyo magluto ng dinner, sasabihin mo na we can't because I'm trying to brew this beer. And then so there's a lot
So
of
when was this?
um,
When was this?
nung I started brewing beer at home. I started rediscovering home brewing in 2011. Um, and so in 2011, so backing up a little bit. So when I was reminded that I brewed beer before, and I reminded myself that it was not very good beer, I thought to myself, okay, sige, so I'll try brewing beer at home, but let me do some actual research because this is real now. I'm actually gonna try something. And when you're older, you have a lot more patience to follow really, really simple instructions, like you have to keep things very sterile and clean when you brew. Actually, there's a saying among brewers na brewers are actually just glorified janitors. We spend a lot of time cleaning things. If you're not brewing beer, you're cleaning the instruments that you need to make beer. So essentially what happened was 2011 I decided na magbrew ako ng beer sa bahay. Bought some rudimentary equipment to do that. And then I brewed from a home brewing kit. It actually comes with a bunch of instructions. If you know how to read and are very patient, makakagawa ka naman ng drinkable beer from a kit. That's actually how most guys start out, or most people, not just guys. Most people
when
start.
did you start Boondocks Beer from that 2011? Recently lang ba yan?
Hindi. Well, okay. So, ang Boondocks, the brand Boondocks Brewing, nag-launch kami noong October of 2016. Shucks. Tama ba yun?
Wow.
Shucks. Yeah, October 2016. Nag-launch kami sa Fred's Revolution dito sa Cubao Expo. We started out with a wheat beer. That was our first beer. Pero before nag-launch kami ng 2016, I actually bought equipment from the States 2 years prior na pang hindi naman, I mean, it was no longer home brewing scale. Pang na siya, like 250 300 liters of beer ang pwedeng i-produce. So hindi siya necessarily home brewing, although pwede namang extremely large scale home brewing if you can really drink that much beer. Most people can. So that's not really home brewing. Usually 5 gallons, so that's about 50 60 liters. That's the normal home brewing size. So nung bumili na ako ng equipment na tipong 300 liters, for some time, because I was still practicing as a lawyer, nakatenga lang yan sa parang warehouse namin.
But you're not practicing now? You're not practicing
now?
No,
I have not practiced law since December 2015.
Okay. Brewer.
Super happy ako. So I actually have my wife to thank for that. Kasi yun na nga, we have this long-term plan kung ano ang retirement plan namin. Brewing is a big part of it. Brewing beer, living kasi I'm from Ilocos Norte, I'm from Lawag. So part of it is we want to retire in Lawag, and beer is a big thing, and so that's how we're gonna mesh all of these plans. Essentially, what happened is nung December 2015, nakatenga yung equipment in this storage room. Tapos sabi ng wife ko, babe, anong nangyayari dyan sa binili natin na may capex tayo dyan na nakatenga sa storeroom? It's time to get off the toilet or take a dump. So pumili ka na. So she goes, I think we're in a good spot. So you know what? Why don't you concentrate on brewing beer, developing recipes, and stop practicing law, and let's see if you can actually do what you say that you can do. So that's how it happened.
Good. Bakit ba, by the way, bakit Boondocks Beer?
Sure.
Boondocks ba yan?
Yeah. So Boondocks, the way that it's spelled, Boondocks, actually is an American English word. The word boondocks is a word in American English which essentially stands for any remote place away from civilization. So essentially, probinsya. That's kind of what boondocks means. It means like yung mga bulubundukin, yung mga ganon. But if it sounds familiar, it's just because that is an American English word that's derived from the Filipino, the Tagalog word bundok. which means mountain, as we in the Philippines know. But why did it become? Why? How did it get adopted by Americans? So when the Americans came here in the late 1890s and the early 1900s, edi syempre may mga kampo yan. There was the war of independence, right? And so what American soldiers would actually do is when they go out on patrol or when they go away from the city, syempre tinatanong sila. So where are you guys headed? Since they can't pronounce the word bundok, they're like, oh, I'm headed off to the boondocks. Because they can't pronounce the word bundok, so they'd say, I'm going off to the boondocks, the boonies, the sticks. That's how the word boondocks came about. And so why did we pick the word boondocks for our brewing company? So essentially, boondocks is something Filipino that left the Philippines and then came back, which is kind of like me, who is from Lawag, left the Philippines and then is now back in some better way.
Nice. Where are you brewing now? In the Boondocks ba? Or?
In the boondocks of Marikina.
Galing Marikina brewer.
Actually sa foothills of the foothills of the I guess the Sierra Madres. So
Wait, game.
Rizal. Yeah.
So, ano ang una natin itatry? What should we try first?
Light.
Okay, so typically when you drink beers, if you have several varieties if you go to if you have several varieties to choose from, normally you want to start from the lightest one, going to the darkest one. So what do you have with you?
So we have 4 flavors, no?
Yes.
Of our products: summer ale, session ale,
yes,
strong, and wheat
At saka wheat.
ale.
Yeah.
So ano unahin natin?
Summer.
Unahin natin si summer.
Summer. Okay. So what's the tasting profile of summer ale?
Okay. So summer ale is essentially an American style, which I'm gonna name the style of beer that it is, but it makes no sense in reality kung bakit siya tinatawag na ganyan. So it's based on an American style called a cream ale, okay? Pero wala siyang cream at saka wala siyang taste of cream at all. So medyo, which is the reason why hindi namin nilalagay sa can like it's an American style cream ale kasi masyadong maraming explanation. So what is the taste profile of a cream ale of this particular style, a summer ale namin? It's a light, easy drinking ale. It's supposed to be drank when the weather's hot, or if you're at the beach, or kumakain kayo ng sisig, or if you have nachos, or if you want chips. Ganun ang pairing niya. It has a very mild, hoppy note. Wala siya masyadong bitterness. Yeah. So go for it.
Well, before we taste it, I'd like to acknowledge Vince. Thank you.
Always present.
Always present. Always addict also with craft beers. Vince Samson, thank you for watching the live stream. And Alan Cloma, thank you.
Hey, Alan.
So this is an all-around beer ba? Or parang beach kind of beer? Parang ganon?
Well, yeah. You can think of it as an all-around beer kasi dito sa atin, essentially, we have... Thank you. I appreciate it. Essentially, we have year-long summer. I mean, really, it's hot enough to be treated in other places of the world as a summer temperature. So, yun, it's all around kasi it's easy to drink and it goes with pretty much anything. Yeah, yung pagkakaiba kasi ng beers namin. So we brew ales, which are different than most of the beers that we grew up drinking. Most of the beers that most of us grew up drinking are usually lagers. So San Miguel Pale Pilsen is a lager, Heineken is a lager, Sapporo is a lager, Kirin is a lager, Tiger, any major mega brewery beer that you can think of is typically a lager, a pilsner. But if you are familiar with Guinness, Guinness is an ale.
Yes.
So yeah, the reason why the
Nakapunta
reason
kami
why
sa ano yan, sa brewery na
sa Guinness Brewery
sa Ireland. Oh.
sa Ireland, yan, buti pa kayo. Kita ko tuloy. That's one of the things. I think every brewer who is worth their salt must go to the Guinness Brewery when you have time.
Pilgrimage.
Pilgrimage yan. And I actually enjoy going to yung mga any kind of brewery, whether it's a craft brewery, a brew pub, or if it's a mega brewery, like say Heineken or yun na nga, Guinness, because there's always something you can learn by going to these things. Yeah. Okay. So how do you like the summer ale? Easy to drink.
It's a good balance. I mean, like if you're starting a meal, because we love craft beers because of the meal. If you're starting, light going into the meal, I think it's refreshing going into it. Parang perfect for Friday. Starting out a Friday in one session. Is this your bestseller, ba? The summer ale?
Yes, it's our bestseller for very, very obvious reasons. Kasi yun na nga. It kind of resembles yung beers that we grew up with. Na it's medyo may pagka-dry, but at the same time it's light and easy drinking. Medyo mas may konting flavor kesa, like say for example like a light beer, not really naming names, but it's still accessible. The taste is accessible. Yeah.
Now question. Why do you decide not bottle but can?
Okay. Well, canning beer is actually, right. I'm gonna make a claim, and some people will disagree, but by and large, it's generally held that cans are better for beer than bottles. There are a couple of exceptions, but generally speaking, cans are better for beer than bottles. Why is that?
Meaning they're fresher, or what does it? What's that? Bakit canning is better?
Okay, so the enemy of beer is sunlight. When you put beer into a can, there is 100% no way for sunlight to ever hit your beer. Have you ever had like beer that's been sitting around, like let's say clear in bote, tapos naaarawan siya, like when you taste it parang may pagka-skunky na taste.
Yes, okay.
That's
what
what
dark
happens.
naman yung mga bottles, di ba? Dark naman yung mga bottles.
Yeah, so I was referring specifically to say like Corona or San Mig Light, in clear bottles. Now, yeah, amber bottles have the ability to prevent UV light from hitting your beer, but at some on some level, there's still always a chance that it could happen, right? Because think of it this way: if you have ever had like the best, freshest tasting beer that usually comes from the tap, right? Draft usually, yeah. So it's usually draft. If you think about a keg is a stainless steel container where you put beer. Well, this is a metal container where you put beer. You don't have a lot of. I mean, you don't typically have people putting draft beer in 2 bottles. And this is the other reason why. This is now the other reason why cans are better for beer, because it's better for the environment. Why is it better for the environment? Di ba? Pag nainom mo na yung beer, sobrang gaan na yung lata, di ba?
Oh, yes.
The can is very light. So just think about the carbon footprint of transporting a bunch of bottles versus the same amount of volume of beer in cans. The weight that is put, the weight that glass containers add to, say, for example, an 18-wheel truck. Tapos isasakay mo yung mga paletang bote. That's a lot more fuel that the truck needs to expend in order to get beer from point A to point B. So that's one advantage. The other advantage is that when you store cans, whether may laman siya, and then now you're in a store, pwede mo siyang i-stack. It's easy. You can stack beer cans. So like if you put it on a shelf, you can have 1, 2, 3 on top of each other, as opposed to kung bote siya, isang bote lang. Takes up a lot of space.
In
right?
terms of shelf life, pareho lang ba yan?
Essentially, it's the same. When I say essentially, all right. Most craft brewers do not pasteurize and we do not filter our beer. So generally speaking, there's an expectation na mga 6 months lang yung lifespan ng beer kung craft brewer, beer na nasa lata or bote. There are exceptions to the rule. Like say for example, yung strong ale namin, which is 8.5%, or any other bottle conditioned beer na medyo mataas yung alcohol niya, yun pwedeng years ang shelf life niya kasi it has enough antibacterial properties to prevent spoilage. That's generally that prevents it. Yeah.
All right. So after summer ale, anong next natin? Para
the next one you should try is wheat ale.
Okay, bakit wheat ale?
Kasi all right.
Wheat lighter also.
So most beer is predominantly made of barley. Yep.
Okay.
There you go. It's predominantly made of barley. On the other hand, wheat beers, like that wheat ale that we have, there's a significant percentage of, instead of barley, wheat ang ginagamit. Now, why do you use wheat? You use wheat for a different taste profile. You use wheat for a different color, for different for para maging cloudy, or all of these things. So that's one of the reasons why you use wheat. Generally, you pick beer was produced because you have a surplus of grain. That's really the reason why beer is produced. So, of course, throughout human civilization, besides barley being around, you always have other grains like rice or wheat. So it's no wonder that Europeans or Egyptians, with their plethora of surplus wheat lying around, anong magagawa nila sa yung wheat? Instead of mabulok siya, gumawa ka na lang ng beer. Same with barley, which is why actually sake was produced in Japan. It's rice. It's essentially a fermented rice beverage. Sake is called a rice wine, but it actually is more. It's actually closer to beer than it is to wine, kasi na-ferment siya in the same way that beer is.
Sorry, what's the taste profile of the wheat beer?
So our wheat beer, like most wheat beers, are typically going to be crisp. They're going to be medyo citrusy. They have a citrus taste. There are some wheat beers will also have a little bit of a sour note, and it all depends on what yeast you're using and the percentage of wheat that you're putting in the beer. Generally, a lot of wheat beer is either made in the style of a Bavarian Weiss beer, which is like Paulaner, mga ganyan, or a Bavarian wit beer, which is like Hoegaarden. Yung beer namin, yung wheat ale namin is actually closer siya sa Hoegaarden as opposed to Paulaner. If you notice, you might be able to detect yung citrus note. Ginagawa namin yan, we brew that with dalandan. Yeah.
Okay. This is good to pair with
fried
fish. Ano bang pairing?
Anything that's lighter tasting. So, like let's say, mag-vinaigrette na salad ka, or like let's say some type of poached fish, or things of that nature. Fried fish, that's also good. Or fish sandwich, chicken sandwich, yung mga ganun. Fried chicken, pwede rin. But ano kasi, like that's the thing about drinking beer that we as a culture don't yet get. kudos to you guys that you've started to enjoy having a beer with your meal. Because if you go throughout Europe or the States, a lot of people will have alcohol with their meal, right? You're used to, most Filipinos have heard of, diba, fancy, so magwa-wine ka with your meal. But if you're not in a predominantly wine drinking country, then you have beer with your meal. So like if you're in Germany, Germany produces wines, but they're not as good as like the French wine. So that's why in Germany you have a lot of people who consume beer with their meals, and that's par for the course. Tayo, ang nakasanayan natin is kung iinom ka ng beer, dapat yung match niya is pulutan. Hindi beer. Tapos ang ano pa, tapos the other thing about drinking in our culture is typically if you drink, talagang inuman na siya, like iinom ka ng medyo madami tapos medyo mahaba, di ba? But I think my colleagues in the craft brewing biz will agree with me na there's a time to enjoy a lot of beer, and there's also a time to enjoy one or two. And I literally mean one or two beers. And that's every day. Every day. Enjoy one or two beers every day. Drink moderately.
Yes. For us, since nasa bahay lang tayo palagi, it really reminds us of travel. Kasi, so we've been to Ireland, we've been to actually Czech Republic, which is craft. And then we actually went to the Danube cruise. So parang all Bavarian beers during that time, no? And then they always pair it with beer nga. So that's why all these craft beers, ang galing meron pala tayong mga ganito in the Philippines. So and that's why Erica, got us into this search for the best craft beers in Manila. Kasi
absolutely.
Meron pala, marami. And it's better, of course, craft beers to be based locally, instead, like, if it's imported from Europe, diba?
Yeah.
Okay, anong next natin?
After wheat, you should try what I'm drinking right now, which is
masarap yung wheat. I like the wheat.
Thank you.
It's actually parang, if you're doing kung wines naman, parang may pagka-champagne siya ng konti, di ba? Citrusy, and it's a good starter also.
Yes, both of those. Either mag-start ka sa summer or mag-start ka sa wheat. Those are they're very light tasting. Actually, yung namin, craft brewers, kami especially, we the volume of our operations is such na we need to be able to produce a beer that is accessible to the tastes of most Filipinos. That's why we also don't produce like 8, 9, 10, 12 varieties of beers. Kasi yung brewery namin we have 8 fermenters, but our fermenters each have 3,500 liters of beer. That's not a lot of beer if you're San Miguel or if you're Asia Brewing, but in the craft beer industry, that's a pretty sizable amount. Right after, kung hindi ako nagkakamali, we are next in line as far as production capacity, next to Encanto. Encanto is the biggest out of all of us. We are the second biggest. Yeah.
Wow, that's good. That's good.
Ano pala yung alcohol contents ng mga beer?
Is it the same ba for all Boondocks Brewing?
No. Yung summer is actually the lowest alcohol namin, percentage namin. That's 5.2%. Yung the wheat beer and the session ale have the same. It's 5.4%. So the next one that you should taste should be session ale.
Session ale. Okay.
Si session ale, tawag namin session kasi it's essentially patterned after an American style. Yep. An American style.
By the way,
yes.
Yung design who made that design?
A good friend of mine, her name is Tanya Gutang Solis. She's a graphic designer and artist. Siya yung nag-design ng mga cans namin. If you'll notice, each of our cans actually has different designs on them.
Ah.
And there's actually the symbols and the iconography on the cans actually is a very personal thing to me. So there's a story to be told behind each one. Syempre, the idea is habang nagiinuman kayo, the more drunk you get, the more you start thinking about ano kaya itong babae dito. So that's actually the diwata. Oh, yan.
Oh, diwata. Okay.
But you will notice on each of the cans, there's this guy.
Yes, ikaw yan.
Sino yan?
Yeah, this guy
Ikaw
is
yan.
So may na-meet kang diwata, ganun yung storya nito.
Yeah, oo. Yung
Habang
na-meet ko yung
umiinom.
diwata. Yeah, oo. Siya yung boss ko. Tapos may tapos may mga musical notes kasi kumakanta siya. Yeah.
Magaling siya kumanta.
Dapat may video to, dapat may QR code tapos may video no story, no? Ang galing
Actually, that would be a great idea. Now I'm trying to shout out to anybody who can help me make that X deal.
Oh, game. So anong tasting notes nitong session ale natin?
Session ale is patterned after is a lighter version of an American style pale ale. So what you will taste here is may malty na background pero it's really may pait na hops. That's going to be the predominant taste that you will notice. Tapos lingering yung hop finish niya. It's not a very aromatic hops. It's more of yung may konting aroma, but it's more on the taste itself. Yeah. So flavorful siya. Yeah. And then yun na nga na hindi yung dating ng hoppiness niya hindi manipis because there's a malt like a semi-sweet background to it. That's actually the thing. And because most Filipinos we have a sweet tooth, no? Mm-hmm. If I made it exactly like an American style pale ale is, the first comment will be masyadong mapait for our tastes. And so most if not all of the beers that we brew at Boondocks are patterned after traditional styles, but I tweak them in order to make it more accessible sa local palate. Hindi naman siya masyadong malayo sa international exemplars, but it's just that I have to do something in order to make it, in order to have us drink it. Otherwise, useless. Nakatenga lang siya sa mga fermenter ko na wala nang umiinom. Yeah.
This goes well with meat, no? I guess. Cuts through the fats and
cuts through the fats. Lalo like if you have something like if you have a nice juicy burger, yan. Masarap yan with a burger. Or I mean anything really. Actually, that's the thing, no? Most beer, because of the alcohol level, if you have something that's greasy like sisig or something like that, most beers would go with most Filipino foods because of the alcohol and the ability to cut through grease. But really, if you have to pair session ale with a particular food, I would pair it with things like like a good burger or if you're having a steak or something like that, or maybe salpicao, mga ganun. Yeah.
Bakit pala session? Parang all your brand is parang more generic, no? Bakit session yung pangalan?
So, session, it's for drinking session.
Okay.
So that's why I call it a session ale. It's really my personal idea of what I would be drinking kung mahabang inuman, a drinking session. And in the beer in elsewhere in the world, in the United States and in Europe, when you think of a session beer, that's a generic term for a normal strength beer that is flavorful, so that hindi ka mauumay sa yung lasa na masyadong hoppy or what, and then at the same time hindi masyadong mataas yung alcohol level niya para pwede man siyang inumin for hours and hours on end with hindi ka maumay. That's the purpose of a session ale. So it's totally different. So a session ale, in my opinion, is totally different than like say si summer ale. Kasi yes, si summer ale definitely pwede mo siyang inumin ng pang mahaba-habang drinking sessions. Inuman. But it's for my palate, for my tastes, hindi siya kasi as flavorful. So at some point, which is the main thing why I don't also drink a lot of mass-produced lagers for drinking sessions. Kasi at some point, I come to the realization na iniinom ko na lang siya parang tubig just so that I can ingest alcohol. I would really like, if I'm going to be drinking that amount of beer for that length of time, gusto ko naman may something more interesting on my palate to keep me interested and going. Kasi otherwise, edi give me 80% food grade ethanol and I'll drink that. I'm just gonna get inject it directly into my veins. I mean, what's the point? Yeah.
So I like this. I actually like hoppy and more so you don't do IPAs, I guess. This is your parang version na
Well, yeah, I don't. Hindi ko sasabihin na it's our version kasi definitely hindi siya IPA. It's a very very conscious decision on my part as the head brewer to not produce an IPA kasi if I produce an IPA in the volumes that we have to produce beer, it will take a very long time for it to be consumed. Kung pwede ko naman siya, so if whenever we're able to visit each other physically, dapat pumunta kayo sa brewery namin so that you can see the size of our fermenters, of our equipment. But we also have a smaller scale, the one that I mentioned before, yung mga tipong 300 liters, and that's what we still use to do pilot brews. So say for example, I want to brew something new, I want to develop a recipe. Doon ko siya gagawin kasi pwede ko na siyang i-scale from 300 liters to 3,000 liters or 2,500 liters. That's easier. Kasi ang mahirap gawin, like magsa-start ka ng 50 liters of beer, tapos gagawin mo siyang 2,000 liters of beer. It doesn't scale up as well. So can we produce an IPA on the smaller equipment? Yes, we can. And we've actually been palagi kaming kinukulit ng mga either yung mga kasama namin na yung ibang brewers or yung mga fans namin na Fred, alam kong we really like your beers, but can you produce an IPA because we know you can. And I tell them, well, yes, thank you for your belief in our ability to brew an IPA. We can, kasi actually I used to brew IPAs for myself. Pero yeah, it's IPAs and double I. Actually, my favorite beer style is a double IPA.
Double IPAs, yes. Oh.
Yeah, but the thing is nung nagpo-produce ako, on a smaller scale, yung IPA ko, 9 times out of 10, yung mga well-meaning na focus group ko, meaning friends, family, people who just want free beer, would say, shucks, napaka-pait naman to. Hindi ko siguro kaya kong uminom ng isa. Pero after that, maghanap ako ng pang-washing.
Yes.
So that's the thing. Like I mean, and like I said, because of the size of our brewery, we need to make responsible choices as far as kung ano yung brew namin. We are happy that our colleagues produce really really great IPAs, New England style IPAs, hazies, chocolate stouts, pastry stouts, because they have the capacity to produce smaller volumes for which they know will be consumed by the craft beer community. On the other hand, like I said, if I produce 2,500 liters of a pastry stout, most likely that beer will remain unconsumed for the better part of a year. Before na maubos siya. So I can't responsibly brew something like that. And yun na nga, as our palates as a culture change, yes, we will start to get to the point na pwede na akong mag-brew ng IPA in like 3,000 liter batch kasi there are enough fans of hoppier beers who will consume that. But yun, until that time happens, you'll probably see us. I think I have to bend to public pressure, to peer pressure and public demand. I think I have to produce an IPA kasi yun na nga ang palaging comment sa akin. Actually, I remember in the early days, like 2016 mga tipong, uy, craft brewer ka pala. Oh, ano yung mga beer mo? Ito, we have a wheat beer, blah, blah. So hindi siya craft beer kasi wala kang IPA. Ako parang, okay. Bakit? So, you mean, kasi, bakit? What is craft beer? IPA, craft beer yan. Kung Imperial Stout, hindi ko alam yan. Basta craft beer, IPA. Ako parang, okay, that's fine. I mean,
it's okay.
Kaya nga, yun na nga. So, part of our advocacy as craft brewers needs to be, we will invariably run across people, well-meaning people who will tell you things na parang, uy, alam mo, dapat ganito yung gawin mo, or dapat meron kang ganyan, or hindi yan craft, or so. You just need to take all of the feedback, not personally, but B, you just have to understand that people are just well-meaning, and they want to help you. They want to help you succeed, and their method of helping you succeed is to give you suggestions. And sometimes the suggestions are valid, and sometimes the suggestions are not so valid. But you just have to accept that people have their own opinions, and yun na, ganun ang mangyayari. So yeah.
Okay, let's go to our last beer. Want to acknowledge Grove Fez says hi. Log from YouTube. So we don't. It's good that we're getting viewers from YouTube, from our YouTube live stream. So, so what's our last? So you only have 4 variants, ba?
Yes, we only have 4 variants.
Okay.
Of beer styles. So etong last si Strong Ale. Si Strong Ale is 8.5%. It's patterned after a Belgian dark strong ale. So dark siya. And it's very malty, meaning sa palate natin kasi wala tayong katumbas ng malty eh. So essentially
the San Miguel malt hindi rin.
Si San Miguel they use malts. All beer has to have some malts in it, but if you'll notice, si San Miguel, they have an all malt product that's San Miguel Premium, 100% malt, which means that every other beer that they have is not created with 100% malt. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just it's just
their
a way
style.
it's just their way of making the beer.
What's the tasting profile of this?
So yun na nga, yung sabi ko nga malty, so it'll present itself to us as matamis, sweet. But it's also very full-bodied, medyo mabigat siya sa bibig. And then you should be able to taste things like dried fruits like apricots or cherries or something along those lines. Yung mga tipong something that you might taste in a cognac, like that sort of sweet, cloyingly kind of sticky taste, ganyan ng, and then hindi siya masyadong hoppy, hindi siya bitter at all.
Hindi siya bitter at all. Yes, correct. Actually, masarap siya. Sarap niya. Oh.
Actually, yung wife ko takot siya dyan eh. Because because ang tawag niya traidor. Because
Why?
because when I first developed that beer, nandun kami we used to have a brewery here in Cubao. That's where we first started out. So when she came over, I had this beer, the strong ale. Tapos she goes, "Okay, can I taste this beer?" And I'm like, "Okay, steady ka lang. Huwag ka masyadong don't chug it kasi matapang 'yan." And then when she tasted, "Uy, ang sarap. It's easy to drink." I was like, "Yeah, but that's why."
More.
So it's easy to drink, but then like when she essentially slammed two servings of that in a span of 20 minutes.
Wow.
It's like that's like drinking six beers in 20 minutes. So yeah, medyo yeah. So after that, she natamaan siya for the next 6 hours. Drinking two beers.
Mo asawa mo.
Okay lang yan. Ano yan, tanggap na yan.
Pero ang sarap nito So, where do you pair this? Is this considered a dessert beer or hindi naman?
You can normally like for those types of beers, so like Trappist ales or Belgian Abbey ales or those beer styles, you normally will consume that. Generally speaking, during the winter months, like you're in front of a fireplace, you need to warm yourself up with like alcohol, like say cognac or something. So instead of having cognac or a dessert or a digestive of some sort, you will have this really strong beer to help you para matunaw yung mga kinain mong kagain.
So parang sipping beer din siya. Hindi mo tinutungga to. Parang you just enjoy it as you go along.
Yeah, definitely. Yung strong ale is one of those beers na you kind of let it sit around. You should actually let that warm up to room temperature. Pwede mo siyang inumin at room temperature and it'll taste almost exactly the same at the temperature that you're drinking now. Normally, actually yung sa lahat ng beer namin with the exception of summer ale, we suggest that you drink the beers at a warmer temperature para lumabas yung flavors ng beer. And that's true among all well-made beers, no?
Wait.
Yes.
What do you mean? Room temperature or nire-ref mo rin siya and then bring it out? Paano? What do you exactly mean?
So, okay. When I say room temperature, I mean European room temperature. So yung mga tipong kahit umabot siya ng like say 16 Celsius, 18 Celsius, masarap pa rin siya. Because yung nakasanayan natin as a culture, inumin mo yung beer below zero or ice cold beer, ganyan. But why have we been programmed to drink beer very, very cold? That's so that there is no flavor. Kasi if the colder something is, the less flavor it will appear on your tongue. Kasi essentially nananam yung taste buds mo. So yes, I will not deny having an ice cold beer on a very hot day is one of the most awesome things that you can do. Sobrang sarap yung cold beer. However, when you have yung session, I've been nursing this thing since we started 45 minutes ago. It is now at a temperature that most Filipinos will think parang mainit na siya, hindi na siya masarap inumin. But actually, it's just for me, it's just at the right temperature to really enjoy yung flavor.
Parang yung pagkain, di ba? Minsan, masarap nga mainit. Pero pag room temp, dun mo malalasahan kung masarap talaga.
Yeah.
Kung may lasa, yung lasa.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, this is what I always tell. Sometimes I conduct beer tasting workshops, beer appreciation workshops. What I'll usually do at the beginning of the workshop, I will pour out one beer. Tapos iwan ko lang siya dun sa, out in the open. And then I usually tell people we won't get to this beer first. We'll, have all this other beer first, right? And then finally, at the end of the tasting session, I'll tell them, this is the one thing that I don't care if you don't get anything else out of this seminar except for this. The better your beer is made, the easier it is for you to drink at any temperature. Okay, so yes, there are beer styles that you should be consuming colder, but that's only because to get rid of the no flavor. So like if you drink Guinness or like a good stout at warmer temperatures, or yung beer namin at warmer temperatures, you'll note that yeah, okay, you might prefer the tactile feeling of cold beer in your mouth, but you cannot deny na yung flavors niya when it was colder are pretty much the same flavors, if not more flavors now that it's warm. Which you can't say that for a lot of larger mega breweries. Kasi and we've all had the experience, when you drink like say, I don't know, any mass-produced lager at, di ba, at the end of the day, medyo marami na kayong nainom, di ba? Naka-pour na yung nandun na yung nandun na sa baso, di ba? Or nandun sa bote. And this has all happened to us. I'm 100% sure. Di in-order mo, waiter, ayan, umorder ka na. Dumating na yung beer mo. Sarap na yung kwentuhan. Maya, nakainom ka na ng madami. But there's still that one beer that you ordered like 30 minutes ago na tinitingnan mo pa lang, iniisip mo na, iniisip mo, shucks, ang sama na siguro ng lasa niyan. Hindi ko na, you are now at what I used to call a crossroads. You are now at the point whether you want to drink more, so iinumin mo na lang siya, and then you just straight mo na lang siya para, then you order a new beer, or you are ready na binayaran mo yung beer na yan pero hindi mo na siya iinumin. Yes. We've all reached that point. Kasi there is a point with some of these beers na when you have it, nakikita mo pa lang, alam mo na yung lasa, medyo nasusuka ka na sa you're like, oh my god, am I gonna drink this? But I mean, I've done it before.
Wait, medyo lasing mo na kami. So, but before we close this session, what happened during the pandemic? Did the Filipinos drink more craft beer or hindi? Because we know that alcoholic was booming, no? Pero I'm not sure whether craft beer did Filipinos, patronize local craft beers particularly. What happened with your company?
So, kami, before the pandemic, before COVID, actually we were predominantly a B2B enterprise. So our beers were always packaged in kegs. Tapos binebenta namin yung kegs sa mga bars and restaurants to be served draft on tap. But yun na nga, during the pandemic, we moved to canning our beers, and it's actually canning our beers is the thing that saved our company from floundering and going under. Kasi we were pleasantly surprised with the response from the community. We gained fans that we never knew we had. Kasi I think what happened was dahil sa yung necessity na magpa-deliver ng alcohol, nagkakaroon ng premium yung mga normal na iniinom ng tao. So like, I mean, a perfect example was Ginebra, right? It was gin. Yung Cuatro Cantos or yung bilog na kung ano yung price niya, naging 4 times the amount. Well, the consumers, I think the consumers in the market realized, okay, it's one thing to pay a premium, but now when you're paying 4 times, 5 times the amount for something that shouldn't cost this much, you might as well try something that's really supposed to cost that much. And so that's what happened with I think that's what happened nung nagano yung COVID na yung fans na naghahanap ng something different kasi yun na nga na we were already stuck at home. So imbes na nasa bahay ka lang na iniinom mo na naman yung kung anong iniinom mo normally, edi shucks, mag-try ka ng iba para at least para maiba naman. So I think while yes, I will never say that COVID is a blessing. I mean, you always have to look for the silver lining in these types of situations. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, we had to pause production and operations for quite some time to keep everybody safe. But at the same time, nag-stockpile rin kami ng cans of beer. So in the times na walang liquor ban, we were, during those times we were able to provide beer to the people who wanted to try something new when it was legally, when we were legally able to do so.
Of course, yeah. That's important.
Disclaimers pa rin yan, but
all right. Thank you so much. Tagal na pala natin, almost 1 hour.
Sorry, maano ako. I'm very talkative.
We need to close this session. Maybe just some final thoughts and speak to Filipinos who are interested on craft beer. What would you say to them, and how would you pitch Boondocks Brewing to them? Sure.
Well, first thing I would say to Filipinos who are looking for craft beers, we have a lot of craft breweries in the Philippines, not just Boondocks Brewing, but my colleagues in the Craft Brewing Association of the Philippines. All of us are trying our best to provide Filipinos with great options that we no longer have to go outside the country to enjoy great beer. Boondocks Brewing Company has been a passion of mine. It's a way for me to bring what I learned outside of the country back to the country and to provide jobs to locals. So instead of patronizing things from abroad, Boondocks Brewing believes in showing Filipinos and the world that we're just as good as anybody else. So try our beer, try the beers of our colleagues. You'll be pleasantly surprised that yes, we are producing some damn fine beer.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. So
thanks,
before we close, Vince was asking.
Lasing ka na ba, Anton?
Hindi, nilalasing ko asawa ko. Pero
Yun! Nice one. Nice.
Meeting pa kami.
May meeting pa kami after this.
Talaga? Wala ako. May meeting ako next door. I'm gonna drink some more beer.
Akala ko sa asawa mo.
Oh, she's next door. I'm gonna drink more beer.
Okay. Pero I like the can, no? I like the can. Actually, na-imagine ko na, no, going to a beach. You know, was our stuck in a beach. Nasa ice cold cooler lang siya and all the cans are there.
Saka yung can mas mabilis lumamig.
Yes, that is a practical benefit to cans. At saka, of course, last thing, I know that we gotta go, but for beaches and swimming pools and those sorts of things, you don't want to bring things na mabasag kasi people are walking out barefoot. So if you have cans, it's safer. I mean, really, that's just another practical benefit. Besides, wait,
Vince,
can I do one more thing?
Okay, sure.
Kasi
This is one more thing that you can do with a can that you can't do with a bottle.
Anton,
Yeah.
Anton.
Bakit ka naman gagawin yun? Sige.
Strong.
Nilasing mo kami. Oh, yeah. Wait. May meeting kami.
Okay. Bye, guys. Nice talking with you.
Wait, let's say Vince. Thanks again, Vince, for joining us.
Gusto mo summer? Summer na lang. Ubusin mo.
Ubus
Pakita
na
mo
ba to? Sige, try natin.
Summer lang.
Bakit mo ginagawa mo yon? Actually,
I-attempt mo yan?
sorry yung summer yung pinakamasarap.
Yeah. Pwede. Good one.
All right.
Thanks guys.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you so much.
Fred.
Medyo tumagal na tayo, but thank you so much for explaining Boondocks Brewery, because I know a lot of Filipinos wanted to experience craft beer, and I think this is the best way to experience it. Thank you so much, Fred, and for explaining to us all your variants, and nilasing mo kami.
Ikaw lang.
Oo nga eh.
Ako namumula lang.
Yun. Thanks
Alright,
guys.
bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.